I mean, this is a good question, but keep in mind that, all of these different services or I guess opportunities to reach consensus on your IEP team, we're still dealing with humans. And, at the end of the day, even though we have mediators that are available, through the state at no charge to the parties, it doesn't mean that they're good. It doesn't mean that they're competent. It doesn't mean that I would use them. It doesn't mean squat. And I can tell you that we've gone through a few cycles, and I've also utilized mediators in multiple states where we practice. And so I've had a pretty good grasp on the mediators that are offered, and I'm going to segue that into IEP facilitators because they're fairly similar with regards to their role, but not really. The value or the ability of the mediator or the IEP facilitator to be of any benefit to the team is personal. All right, that person has to decide that they want to gain the knowledge base to understand everything that's going on. They also have to work on their personality, to be able to sort of jettison the natural human pull toward the group, all right, or toward anybody's one opinion or influence. That's not easy, guys. All right, think about your own relationships and think about, your own interactions at work. Think about your own political thoughts and I tell you, that's one of the craziest things, if you really want to go out there and is that there are people, and I'm friends with many people that, absolutely would never agree with me in a million years politically. I'm not an issues person. I'm fairly a free spirit and independent in my thinking. And as a good Gen Xer would be, I'm also very cynical of politics. But at the same time, what I find fascinating sometimes is that you take some of these people out of the group and you start talking to them away from the group and one-to-one, they're actually quite rational. And unfortunately, when you put people into groups, and that includes special education IEP meetings, mediations, tense situations or situations to where, there's dominant personalities. Unless you're a dominant personality on those groups, then, it's an interesting dance to watch of who's going to step up and who's going to have the courage to walk in a different step or to a different beat than everyone else there. So our mediators and our IEP facilitators are not immune to, what I consider just the realities of human nature. And I never go into a situation assuming that any of these people, regardless of their degree and regardless of where they went to college, or high school or anything, it just doesn't impress me. Results impress me. How you communicate impresses me. Your desire to better yourself by going and constantly trying to brighten your light and make progress with your own personal self and gain knowledge. Now, that's different than going to college. I mean, college is just a passport to do more damage in the world. That's all it is. If you really want to get to it, this is coming from somebody who has one of the ultimate degrees to be able to go out there and screw with everybody's life, and I have a choice. I can either use my degree and my license for good, or I could go out there and do what many have chosen to do and be absolute and ridiculous scumbags. And not better society and not move this process forward in a positive way and trying to leave a mark of unity. You know, these are not difficult problems to solve that we're looking at, but so many of the impediments that we have in this process is strictly humans perched upon whatever perceptive power trip that they're on. I mean, I sit there and I think, why do we have problems on this IEP team or this IEP team? Well, I can tell you, so much of it is how the IEP team communicates with each other and who on that team is able to check their power. And that includes some parents, you know, that have those strong personalities that will not listen, and that bulldog. All right. It's also not good for parents to do that. Now, they're not as abundant as principals and special ed directors and some resource teachers, you know, that sport that attitude as though somehow their degree knighted them with natural knowledge, and it's just not true. I mean, what's horrible is that, you know, when you act like that, you're just displaying your ignorance, and it just doesn't impress me. Like I said, those receptive to think in a different manner, think outside the box, consider things they haven't considered, that are also self-taught, because learning does not end. And all you did at college or in high school is learn basics or bad information that you spend a lifetime figuring out was a bunch of bunk and just the personal opinion of some professor that smelled like patchouli and wore Birkenstocks. And I'm not going to sit there and hand over any of my mental power to those idiots. Okay, so it is one of those things to where you always have to keep in mind that these tools, like an IEP facilitator or a mediator or an advocate, or even as a special education attorney, every one of these people are human. Do your homework. You know, find out what makes them tick. Find out if they're passionate about what they're doing. Find out if they're knowledgeable in what they're doing. I've known some advocates and some, you know, special education attorneys that they're knowledgeable people, but they're horrible communicators. And I can tell you right now, I'd rather have somebody that had a mediocre knowledge base as an advocate, that understood how not to make things worse on my IEP team, that understood that it's not about you, it's about my child. Somebody who isn't in there grandstanding, or somebody who isn't in there with a confidence issue, having to sit there and over-talk situations and try to show everybody how smart they are. Though that's just not the way you know, anybody should act. Now, as an IEP facilitator, you know, they're supposed to be in there and help the parties, you know, communicate better. And yes, they should take a larger role in that. And if that person did not do that, and depending on the school system you're in, if it's one of those, you know, hoity-toity, you know, I'm really full of myself because I live in a college town. You know, there's two that I know of that you know, some of the people that work inside those schools, it's like they you know, that false sense of awesome just because you happen to you know, teach school, not even college, but teach school in, let's just make it up, let's call it Blobbern. You know, that you know, that somehow that just infuses you know, a natural intelligence better than, you know, your compatriot over in your neighboring county school, which isn't true. It's ridiculous, but so much of this stuff is just a meandering pile of mess, and that's why, as a parent, and I know it gets exhausting, guys, I know it does, but understand that everybody that you bring in besides you, because nobody loves your child like you love your child, and nobody understands and knows your child like you know your child. There's a lot of resources out there that can sit there and support you, but never, ever expect them to be a crutch, and never, ever expect them to be a replacement to your advocacy. And so raising your level of knowledge, raising your understanding of how to properly and positively communicate on your team, be able to check your emotions, and be able to navigate this process, then you won't need these people like facilitators. I think there are benefits sometimes. I do. I encourage parents to use them when they have a hostile team. But in a situation like that, if you see that they're not participating and you see that they're taking notes and they're not keeping the other side in check and you're feeling anxiety about that, then stop the meeting. Pause it and say, hey, can I talk to you outside? Out of earshot of these people, and then have your opportunity to let them know that hey, this isn't going like you want. And then put them on notice. And if you put them on notice, then believe me, they're going to take over the meeting as they should and help guide it. Okay? But just always keep your eyes open as to the humans that you're surrounding yourself with, and just never ever expect more than mediocre from people. I always sit there and expect them to shock me. That's what I want. Shock me. I'm going in with this opinion, and I don't care where you went to school. Don't care how much you think you know. I'm going to start here, and then you open your mouth and you impress the hell out of me. And it's not by spouting off, any kind of law or knowledge or anything like that. It's how you are communicating with me. And it's also your receptiveness to listen and consider things maybe you haven't considered. That's the mark of a positive and intelligent person, in my viewpoint. But great question. Just always buyer beware whenever you get involved in stuff like this.